Good morning/afternoon, everyone. We've all been there. Someone says something cruel, betrays our trust, or deliberately causes us pain. And in that moment, it feels personal, it feels unfair, and it makes us question our worth. But let's pause for a second. Let's breathe. Why do people hurt others intentionally? What does it say about them, and what does it say about hurt people? Hurt people. I'm sure you've heard that before, and while it doesn't excuse cruelty, it helps us understand the cycle. People who harm others often act from their own wounds, their own insecurities. Some do it for control, some to mask their pain, and some because they've never learned a different way to cope. That doesn't mean we accept it. It means we see it clearly, without letting it define. One of the greatest tools we have is boundaries. A boundary is simply saying, this is okay, and this is not okay. Boundaries are not about controlling others, they're about protecting ourselves. They are an act of self-respect. When someone intentionally hurts you, ask yourself, what is my limit? What am I willing to accept? The most powerful thing we can do isn't to fight back, but to step back and say, I will not allow this in my life. When someone hurts us, we often turn inward, wondering, was it my fault? Am I too much? Am I not enough? That's shame talking. And shame loves silence. But vulnerability is the antidote to shame. It allows us to say, yes, this hurt me. Yes, I feel betrayed. But I will not let this pain shrink me. I will not let someone else's actions dictate my worth. Being vulnerable is not about weakness. It's about having the courage to feel, to speak, and to heal on our own terms. The most powerful response to intentional hurt is not revenge, it's resilience. You are not what happened to you. You are not the cruel words someone threw at you. You are not the betrayal, the gossip, or the rejection. You are someone who can rise strong. You are someone who can choose growth over resentment. You are someone who can say, this will not break me, it will shape me. Because at the end of the day, the way we respond to hurt defines our story. We can let pain close us off, or we can use it as fuel to become stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. So the next time someone hurts you intentionally, pause. Breathe. Set your boundary. Own your worth. And rise strong. When we talk about intentional hurt, it's important to understand that it's not always about a simple misunderstanding or a fleeting moment of frustration. Intentional hurt is the result of a deliberate choice to cause someone emotional, mental, or physical pain. It's a painful reality that sometimes, the people closest to us are the ones who hurt us the most, not by accident, but with purpose. This can be a difficult pill to swallow, especially when we want to believe in the goodness of others. The harsh truth is that people sometimes hurt others because of their own unresolved pain, insecurities, and unmet needs. One of the reasons people hurt others intentionally is because they themselves are hurting. The wounds they carry, often unseen by the outside world, drive them to lash out, seeking control or validation through inflicting harm. The anger, frustration, or jealousy they feel doesn't always get processed or expressed in healthy ways, and instead of turning inward to deal with their own feelings, they project them onto someone else. They may do this because they lack the emotional intelligence to cope with their emotions effectively, or because they've learned, perhaps from past experiences, that hurting others is a way to regain a sense of power. In some cases, people may be acting out of learned behavior, perhaps growing up in an environment where hurtful actions were normalized, or being conditioned to suppress vulnerability and project strength through aggression. It's crucial to recognize that hurt is often a reflection of the person who is doing the hurting, not of the person who is on the receiving end of it. When someone intentionally causes pain, it's often because they are not able to process their own emotions. Hurt people, this is a phrase we hear often, and it holds deep truth. The person who is causing harm may be struggling with their own feelings of inadequacy, fear, or anger. They might feel powerless in other areas of their life and seek to reclaim some sense of control by manipulating or hurting others. Sometimes, the person doing the hurting is simply projecting their inner turmoil onto someone they perceive as vulnerable or an easy target. In these situations, the intentionality of the harm is often not rooted in a desire to hurt the other person, but rather a desperate attempt to cope with their own unresolved emotions. At its core, intentional hurt is a cry for help. It's an unhealthy coping mechanism, a desperate plea for someone to see their pain. The person causing harm may not even fully understand why they're doing it. They may not recognize that they are acting out of their own insecurities or emotional struggles. This doesn't excuse the behavior, but it does offer a lens through which we can view the situation more empathetically. Understanding that the person who hurt you may be acting out of their own unprocessed pain allows you to separate their actions from your self-worth. It reminds you that their intentional hurt is a reflection of them, not you. Another reason people hurt others intentionally is that they may feel threatened or insecure in some way. This can manifest as jealousy, competition, or fear of losing something important to them, be it a relationship, power, or control over a situation. In these instances, the hurt inflicted is a form of defense, a way to diminish the other person and reassert dominance. The act of intentionally hurting others can be a form of self-protection, even if it's misguided. It's a way to push others down in order to elevate oneself, to create a sense of superiority, or to shield oneself from vulnerability. People who feel insecure about their own standing or value might tear others down to feel better about themselves, though in doing so, they only deepen their own sense of inadequacy and perpetuate a cycle of pain. Sometimes, people hurt others intentionally because of a need to control or manipulate the situation. This is particularly prevalent in relationships where power dynamics are unbalanced. For example, in abusive relationships, whether they are familial, romantic, or professional, one person may intentionally hurt another to maintain power and control. In these scenarios, the hurt is part of a broader pattern of manipulation, where the person doing the hurting uses tactics like emotional abuse, gaslighting, or isolation to keep the other person in a vulnerable position. The hurt is calculated and strategic, meant to undermine the other person's sense of self-worth and independence. This kind of intentional harm is insidious because it doesn't always look like overt aggression. It can be subtle, such as through criticism, belittling, or withholding affection. But the underlying intent is the same: to maintain control and make the other person feel small or insignificant. In some cases, intentional hurt comes from a lack of awareness. People may not always recognize the impact of their actions on others. They may justify their behavior by claiming that they were provoked or that they didn't mean to cause harm, when in reality, their words or actions were calculated and designed to inflict pain. This type of hurt often occurs when someone has not been taught to be empathetic or to understand the consequences of their behavior. They may lack emotional intelligence or simply not care about how their actions affect others. In these cases, it's crucial for the person on the receiving end of the harm to recognize that their worth is not determined by the intentions or behavior of others. While it can be incredibly painful to experience intentional hurt, it is important to understand that it doesn't have to define your experience or your relationship with the person who caused the pain. When someone intentionally hurts you, it is often a reflection of their inability to process their own emotions or their attempts to control a situation. It's not a reflection of your worth or value. Recognizing that intentional hurt is a symptom of someone else's internal struggles allows you to step back and process the situation more clearly. It gives you the space to respond in a way that protects your emotional well-being without internalizing the hurt. In the end, it's not about what they did to you, but how you choose to heal, grow, and move forward. You can choose to break the cycle of harm by setting boundaries, by cultivating empathy, and by embracing your own healing journey. Boundaries are one of the most powerful tools we can use to protect ourselves and preserve our well-being. They are not about building walls to shut others out, but about creating healthy guidelines for how we interact with others and how we allow them to treat us. Boundaries are essential in maintaining emotional, mental, and physical health, particularly when we encounter people who intentionally hurt us. Whether these boundaries are established in personal relationships, professional settings, or within our communities, they serve as a critical safeguard, ensuring that we can engage with others in a way that honors our own needs and values. Setting boundaries can be incredibly difficult, especially if we are not used to standing up for ourselves or if we've been conditioned to prioritize the needs and feelings of others over our own. We often fear that setting boundaries will lead to conflict, rejection, or being perceived as selfish. But the truth is, boundaries are an act of self-respect. They communicate to others what is acceptable behavior and what is not. Without clear boundaries, we leave ourselves vulnerable to emotional exhaustion, burnout, and resentment. When people intentionally hurt us, whether through words, actions, or inaction. Our boundaries give us the power to decide what we will tolerate and what we will not. Many of us are raised with the idea that being accommodating or nice is a virtue, but in reality, this often leads to neglecting our own needs and feelings. We may have been taught that conflict is something to avoid at all costs, or that saying no is rude or inconsiderate. As a result, we may find ourselves in relationships or situations where our needs are not being met, where we feel drained or unheard, and where we are being subjected to behaviors that undermine our sense of worth. In these instances, setting boundaries can feel uncomfortable or even unnatural. But the more we practice setting and maintaining boundaries, the easier it becomes, and the more we protect our own emotional space. When we set a boundary, it's a clear statement that we value ourselves enough to stand up for what is right for us. Boundaries aren't about controlling others, they are about taking control of our own lives and ensuring that we don't lose ourselves in unhealthy relationships or situations. They are the rules we set for how we expect to be treated, and they are an essential part of maintaining healthy, respectful relationships. They create a structure that allows us to engage with others in a way that doesn't compromise our emotional or mental well-being. Setting boundaries can look different depending on the situation. It might involve physically removing yourself from a situation where you feel unsafe, whether that's leaving a party, a meeting, or a conversation that feels toxic. Or it might involve verbalizing your needs, such as saying, "I need some space right now," or "I'm not comfortable with that behavior." It can also mean deciding not to engage in certain conversations or relationships altogether if they are consistently harmful to you. One of the most important things to remember is that boundaries are not static. They may change depending on the circumstances or the level of trust you have with someone. For example, your boundary with a close friend may be different than with an acquaintance or coworker. But in all cases, your boundaries should be based on what feels safe and respectful for you. When someone intentionally hurts us, our boundaries serve as a protective shield. It's easy to get caught up in the emotional aftermath of being hurt, feelings of anger, betrayal, and confusion. But setting a boundary helps to take the focus off the hurtful behavior and refocuses it on what we are willing to tolerate. For example, if someone makes a hurtful comment, instead of allowing that comment to linger in your mind or spiral into self-doubt, you can assert your boundary by calmly saying, "That comment was hurtful, and I'm not willing to engage in this conversation any further." By doing this, you are not allowing the other person to control the narrative, and you are affirming your own worth and dignity. Boundaries also play a vital role in managing the expectations of others. When we don't set clear boundaries, we allow others to dictate the terms of our relationships, and over time, this can lead to feelings of frustration and resentment. However, by establishing and communicating our boundaries early on, we set the tone for how we expect to be treated. This is particularly important in relationships where there is an imbalance of power, such as in workplaces or in toxic personal relationships. People who have a habit of intentionally hurting others may try to push your boundaries, either out of ignorance or a desire to maintain control. In these cases, it's essential to hold firm to your boundaries, even if it feels uncomfortable. Remember, setting a boundary isn't about punishing the other person, it's about protecting your emotional and mental health. One of the key aspects of boundaries is understanding that they are not a one-time event, they are ongoing. People may test your boundaries, especially if they are used to overstepping them. This is why it's crucial to reinforce boundaries consistently. It may take time for others to adjust to the new standards you've set, and they may resist or push back. But this is where your inner strength comes in, standing firm in the knowledge that you deserve respect and consideration. You are not responsible for how others react to your boundaries, only for setting them and maintaining them. If someone reacts negatively or tries to manipulate you into breaking your boundary, it's a sign that they may not have the capacity to respect your needs. In these situations, your boundary is an invitation for you to reconsider the relationship and decide if it's one that is worth maintaining. Setting and maintaining boundaries is an essential form of self-care. It allows us to preserve our energy, protect our emotional well-being, and ensure that we are engaging in relationships that are mutually respectful and fulfilling. It's important to remember that boundaries are not just for protecting us from harm, they are also about fostering healthy connections with others. When we set boundaries, we create space for others to treat us with the respect and care that we deserve. and we model healthy relationship dynamics for those around us. By setting clear and consistent boundaries, we take responsibility for our own happiness and well-being. We stop relying on others to define how we should feel or how we should be treated. We take back control over our own emotional lives and empower ourselves to create the kind of relationships that honor our needs, values, and self-worth. And ultimately, this is the true power of boundaries. They allow us to live authentically, to protect our emotional health, and to cultivate relationships based on mutual. Shame is one of the most powerful and destructive emotions we can experience. It often comes uninvited, like a dark cloud that casts a shadow over our lives, making us feel unworthy, unlovable, or inadequate. When someone intentionally hurts us, the emotional impact can feel even more amplified because it's not just about the pain of the harm itself, it's about how that pain is internalized. Often, we start to wonder if we somehow deserve it, if we're responsible for it, or if there is something inherently wrong with us. Shame thrives in silence, and it tells us that we are flawed, broken, or unworthy of love and respect. But the reality is that shame, while deeply painful, does not have to be the final word in our lives. When we experience intentional hurt, whether from a friend, family member, colleague, or even a stranger, our initial reaction may be a sense of betrayal, anger, or sadness. But beneath those emotions often lies shame, the belief that we must have done something wrong to deserve this treatment. This belief can quickly spiral, making us feel like we're not good enough, or that we somehow brought the hurt upon ourselves. But shame is a liar. It distorts the truth, and if we allow it to, it can take root and grow, infecting every part of our emotional well-being. What happens when we believe the lie of shame is that we internalize it. We start to believe that the hurt we've experienced is a reflection of who we are. We carry the weight of that hurt as if it's our burden to bear, forgetting that the actions of others do not define us. When we are hurt intentionally, it is not a reflection of our worth. It is a reflection of the person who inflicted the harm. Their actions are a manifestation of their own pain, insecurity, or inability to cope with their emotions in a healthy way. But shame makes it hard to see this. Instead of recognizing that the hurt is about them, we make it about us. We turn the blame inward, believing that if we were different, perhaps the hurt wouldn't have happened. But this is the trap of shame. It tells us that we are unworthy of love or respect, that we are not enough, and that we must change ourselves to avoid future pain. To break free from the grip of shame, we must learn to embrace vulnerability. Vulnerability is often misunderstood as weakness, but it is, in fact, the greatest form of strength we can possess. Vulnerability is not about being exposed to further harm, it's about having the courage to show up as our true, authentic selves, despite the risk of being hurt. It's about acknowledging our emotions, feeling our pain, and choosing to heal rather than hide. Vulnerability is the key that unlocks the door to healing, and it allows us to move beyond shame into a place of growth and self-acceptance. When we embrace vulnerability, we take the power away from shame. We refuse to let it define us, and instead, we take ownership of our own emotional experience. We acknowledge that yes, we've been hurt, and yes, it's painful, but that pain does not diminish our worth. In fact, it enhances our strength. Vulnerability allows us to say, I am hurting right now, but I am worthy of healing. I am worthy of love. I am enough. This is not an easy shift to make, especially when we feel exposed or raw after being hurt. But it is in that rawness, that openness, that we find true strength. One of the most powerful aspects of vulnerability is that it allows us to connect with others in a real and meaningful way. When we show up vulnerably, we allow ourselves to be seen, and in doing so, we create space for others to show up authentically as well. Vulnerability fosters empathy. It allows us to share our pain and to receive support, not as a sign of weakness, but as an affirmation of our humanity. It reminds us that we are not alone, and that our worth is not contingent on being perfect or never experiencing pain. Vulnerability is the bridge that connects us to others, and through that connection, we find healing. Resisting shame also means letting go of the need for perfection. Many of us have internalized the belief that we must be flawless in order to be worthy of love and acceptance. We may feel like we need to hide our imperfections, our mistakes, and our pain to be seen as good enough. But perfectionism only feeds shame. It convinces us that if we are not perfect, we are not worthy of compassion, love, or kindness. Vulnerability, on the other hand, teaches us that it is okay to not be okay. It teaches us that our worth is not tied to our ability to be flawless, it is tied to our humanity. It is tied to our capacity to show up, even in the midst of our struggles, and say, I am enough as I am, even in my imperfection. When we choose vulnerability over shame, we create a safe space within ourselves to heal. Healing does not happen by pretending that we are unaffected by the pain. It happens when we allow ourselves to feel the pain, to sit with it, and to process it. Vulnerability is not about wallowing in our hurt, it is about facing it head-on and choosing not to let it define us. By embracing vulnerability, we acknowledge that hurtful experiences have an impact on us, but they do not have to control our future. We choose to move through the pain, rather than staying stuck in it. Shame thrives in isolation, but vulnerability invites connection. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we create the opportunity to share our pain with others, to seek support, and to find solidarity. We let go of the idea that we must face everything alone, and instead, we open ourselves up to the possibility of receiving care, understanding, and compassion from others. This is how healing begins, not by closing ourselves off and hiding our wounds, but by allowing ourselves to be seen, even in our brokenness. In choosing vulnerability, we also create the opportunity for growth. It is through vulnerability that we learn to trust ourselves again. We learn that we can survive pain, that we are resilient, and that we have the strength to move forward. Vulnerability allows us to see our own capacity for healing and transformation. It reminds us that while we may be hurt, we are not broken. We are human, and that humanity is what connects us all. So, when we resist the pull of shame and choose to embrace vulnerability, we are not choosing to remain in pain, we are choosing to step into our power. We are choosing to redefine what it means to be enough, not by the absence of hurt or imperfection, but by our ability to show up, despite them. And in doing so, we open the door to healing, connection, and growth. Healing and rising strong after experiencing intentional hurt is a profound and transformative process. It is not something that happens overnight, nor is it a linear journey. The path to healing is often messy, with twists and turns, moments of doubt, and times when we feel we are taking 2 steps backward for every step forward. But it is also a path of incredible growth, where we reclaim our power and redefine who we are, regardless of what others have done to us. Healing is not about erasing the pain, but about learning how to live with it in a way that empowers us. It's about accepting that hurt is a part of life, but that we are not defined by the hurt we experience. We can choose to use it as a catalyst for growth, resilience, and strength. When someone intentionally hurts us, it feels like an assault on our trust, our sense of self-worth, and sometimes, our ability to see the world as a safe place. It's easy to fall into the trap of believing that the hurt will define us forever, that the scars will never fade. But the truth is, we have the ability to heal and to rise stronger than before. The journey to healing begins with acknowledging the pain, feeling it, and allowing ourselves the space to process it. We often try to avoid or suppress pain, thinking that if we ignore it, it will go away. But healing only begins when we face our emotions head-on, allowing ourselves to feel the full spectrum of what we're going through: anger, sadness, betrayal, confusion, fear. These feelings are not weaknesses, they are a testament to our humanity. They are signals that we are alive and capable of experiencing deep emotional connection. Healing is not about denying the pain or pretending that it hasn't affected us. It's about embracing the truth of our emotions and recognizing that our hurt does not diminish our value. In fact, it can enhance our sense of strength. When we allow ourselves to fully experience the pain and vulnerability, we create space for healing to happen. By facing the hurt directly, we stop running from it and start moving through it. This may look like talking about our feelings with someone we trust, journaling our thoughts, or simply giving ourselves permission to rest and process in our own time. It's important to honor our own pace in this journey, because healing isn't a race. It's a personal experience, and we must give ourselves the grace and patience to move through it in a way that feels right for us. One of the hardest parts of healing is learning to let go of the resentment or bitterness that often accompanies hurt. When we've been intentionally hurt by someone, it's natural to want to hold on to that anger, to let it fester as a form of protection. We may want to punish the person who hurt us, or at the very least, we want them to understand the pain they caused. But holding on to anger and resentment only keeps us tethered to the past, preventing us from moving forward. Rising strong requires us to make a choice to let go of the need for revenge or for the other person to apologize. We don't need the approval or validation of others to heal. We heal for ourselves, not because someone else has acknowledged their wrongdoing, but because we choose to reclaim our power. Forgiveness, in this sense, is not about excusing the behavior of others, it's about freeing ourselves from the grip of resentment. It's about releasing the hold that the hurt has over us, so we can stop carrying the weight of it. Forgiveness is an act of self-care, not a gift to the person who hurt us. It doesn't mean we have to forget the pain or pretend it didn't happen, but it does mean that we no longer let it control our lives. By choosing to forgive, we are making a conscious decision to move forward, to stop allowing the actions of someone else to determine our emotional state. This doesn't happen all at once, and it's not something we can rush. It's a gradual process, but it's one that ultimately leads to liberation. Rising strong also requires us to rebuild trust not just in others, but in ourselves. After we've been hurt, it's natural to question our ability to trust again. We may wonder if we missed warning signs or if we somehow allowed the situation to unfold. But trust is an integral part of healing, and it begins with trusting ourselves. It's about believing that we are worthy of love, respect, and kindness, despite the hurt we've experienced. It's about acknowledging that we made the best decisions we could at the time, given what we knew and understood. And it's about recognizing that we have the strength and wisdom to move forward, even after pain. Rebuilding trust in others comes more slowly, and that's okay. We don't have to rush the process or force ourselves to be open before we're ready. Trust is earned, and it requires time, consistency, and mutual respect. But by rising strong, we create the foundation for healthy relationships in the future. We learn to set clearer boundaries, to communicate more openly, and to engage with others in ways that are more aligned with our values. Rising strong is not about erasing the past, it's about using the lessons learned to build a stronger future. As we heal and rise strong, we also begin to reclaim our sense of identity. When someone intentionally hurts us, it can shake our confidence and make us question who we are. We may start to doubt our worth, our abilities, or our judgment. But healing allows us to reconnect with our true selves, the person we are at our core, beyond the pain and the hurt. Rising strong means embracing our authenticity and stepping back into the world with confidence and clarity. It's about learning to trust our instincts again, to listen to our inner voice, and to honor our needs. Healing and rising strong also involve gratitude. It may seem counterintuitive to find gratitude in the midst of pain, but gratitude has a transformative power. When we look back at the hurt we've experienced, we can begin to see the lessons it has taught us. We can find strength in the ways we've grown, resilience in the ways we've persevered, and compassion in the ways we've learned to understand others' struggles. Gratitude doesn't minimize the pain, it helps us see the bigger picture. It shifts our focus from what was lost to what has been gained through the process of healing. Ultimately, healing and rising strong is a journey of self-empowerment. It is about reclaiming our narrative, rewriting the story of our lives in a way that is not defined by the hurt we've endured, but by the strength we've developed in overcoming it. We are not the sum of the harm done to us, we are the sum of how we rise, how we heal, and how we choose to grow. Each step forward, no matter how small, is a victory. And in the end, we emerge from the pain stronger, wiser, and more whole than before. It sounds like you're wrapping up a video or message for your audience. Here's a suggestion to polish it up. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'm so glad that all of you enjoy my channel and the content I create. Your support means the world to me. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next video. Feel free to adjust it to match your style.